I think we have begun to see pushback. Even just like an hour ago, Ron DeSantis down in Florida announced that he fired all of the DEI employees in Florida at the University of Florida. So that was terrific. You're seeing at another university, you saw Harvard just appoint a provost who is former Scalia and Bork clerk. So somebody who's a little bit more maybe bringing things back toward the center. But in no way is this inevitable in any kind of realm of our society. We've got to keep pushing, keep engaging, or the left will just continue to take and take and take and push and push and push, and the situation will get even worse.
Welcome back to the program. My guest today is a senior fellow at the Clairmont Institute. He is also a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Interior under President Trump. He is here today to discuss his new book, The Unprotected Class: How Anti-White Racism is Tearing America Apart. Please welcome Jeremy Carl to the show. How are you doing, Jeremy?
It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm doing great.
Good. So let's get right into this. Obviously, we have seen this anti-white rhetoric probably for at least the last 5 to 7 years, maybe even longer than that. A lot of that has to do with, all of these people being woke these days, diversity, equity, inclusion, which really should be diversity, equity, and exclusion, if we're going to be honest. You saw the Bud Light situation. We've seen Target and all their craziness that has gone on, the wokeness, the pronouns, all of this stuff. And now it's getting even worse. Some companies are starting to fire their diversity, employees and things like that because they understand it's costing them financially. I have said all along that at some point, businesses are going to have to make a decision. Do I want to go woke or do I want to go broke? In your opinion, do you think we're going to start to see more of these companies pull away from the diversity, equity, inclusion, or is this going to be a steamroll right into hell with this stuff?
Well, Josh, I think it's going to be a fight, quite honestly, and it's part of the reason that I wrote the book, because I think we've got one side that's been fighting this battle for a long time, and the other side sort of pretending that there is no battle going on. And that doesn't usually work out well for the side that isn't kind of clued into reality. I think we have begun to see pushback. Even just like an hour ago, Ron DeSantis down in Florida announced that he fired all of the DEI employees in Florida at the University of Florida. So that was terrific. You're seeing at another university, you saw Harvard just appoint a provost who is former Scalia and Bork clerk. So somebody who's a little bit more maybe bringing things back toward the center. But in no way is this inevitable in any kind of realm of our society. We've got to keep pushing, keep engaging, or the left will just continue to take and take and take and push and push and push, and the situation will get even worse.
Well, I definitely think it's important for consumers to be aware, of course, of the corporations and companies that are pushing all of this wokeness. I mean, clearly we saw that with Bud Light and how many billions of dollars in revenue that they have lost. They're no longer anywhere near as big as they once were. We saw with Target and the satanic clothing line and, the weird underwear and all these other crazy things. But we have to go and say, where is this stuff coming from? Who's pushing this stuff? And I think we can really point to one major organization, and that is the falsely named Human Rights Campaign. This is a group of radical extreme leftists in Washington, D.C., that pretty much go into corporate boardrooms and basically threaten people and say, look, if you don't do this, if you don't hire these people, if you don't have these types of policies, we're going to picket you, we're going to do all these different things, we're going to boycott you financially and everything else. And it seems as though these wokeocracies in corporate America are just, folding like cheap suits. And that has to stop. Some of them are pushing back, but I think that what we're finding is that it's going to come down to money over anything else. And if they want to continue to be in business, like look at the Ford company, for instance. Now with all the electric vehicles, which no charging stations for. Now some of these companies are starting to go away from the electrical vehicles. So again, as consumers, we have to be diligent, but we also have to expose a lot of these companies. Now, let's talk about your book, The Unprotected Class, How Anti-White Racism is Tearing America Apart. Clearly, that is a great title, number one. But number two, you are right, because you have this CRT business, right, that they teach in schools, this indoctrination. And they've been doing that for many, many years. They want to teach, wrong history on purpose and things of that nature. Tell us a little bit about the book and what did you learn about yourself that you didn't know from writing?
That's a great question, Josh. I mean, so first, the book is hopefully at least somewhat apparent from the title. It's really a look at anti-white racism as a comprehensive sort of subject and something that has really kind of become ubiquitous in American society. And what I sort of saw in my motivation for writing the book was there were a lot of people that it's the metaphor I like to use is the blind men touching the elephant, and each is touching a different part, and none of them kind of quite know what it is. So it was anti-white racism in every kind of element and discrimination of American society. You saw it in Hollywood, you saw it in corporate America, as you just touched on. You see it in the way that crime is talked about. You see it in the military. So there were all these different areas. I actually have 11 different chapters in the book where I did go into different subject areas, but there wasn't really anyone who had tied it all together and said, you know what, the elephant is an elephant, okay? And all these things are sort of part of a same system. And for me, with an academic background, I also kind of wanted to tie it in with a little bit of a theoretical framework to kind of understand why we were in this situation, because these sorts of ideas don't just spring fully armored like Athena from Zeus's head, ready for battle. They have gestation. There's reasons why they're happening. And certainly the thing that I learned about maybe myself as I was writing this book was that kind of I had the guts to do it. For a long time, I was hoping somebody else was going to write this book, quite frankly, because it's a controversial subject. I'm not afraid of controversy, but you're going to take hits when you write a book like that, and you're kind of a person who does serious kind of public policy and scholarly work. But at the end of the day, while there have been some people who've written some really good books in and around these areas, there would really nobody had kind of tied it all together. And so I just wanted to do that in a really direct way that would provide the average reader a kind of opening to sort of understand a lot of these seemingly disparate phenomena that they're seeing around them and understand how they all are interrelated.
Excellent, excellent. Well, look, I asked that question to almost every person that I interview because, again, it is a cathartic activity to write a book. You really kind of have to focus and kind of expand your horizons and kind of put a lot of emotions and feelings into it because it is your work of art. And so that's why I always ask that question. But moving forward here, with all the wokeness and the pronouns and all these other crazy things, I'm assuming you are aware of the latest scandal with Fannie Willis. And no, I'm not talking about whether she'll have her case dismissed, which hopefully is going to happen. But I'm talking about through her fake diversity, equity, and inclusion garbage. There's been a report out that they have shown slides and video components of the most horrific anti-white racism I've ever even seen, where they literally have these people going to these training courses and they have questions that say, how do you feel about Black people? How do you feel about white people? And then there's like a checklist. I moderately like Black people. I hate Black people. I love Black people. I feel equal about Black people. I like white people more than Black people. I mean, it's really disgusting. It is
Right.
really disgusting what Fannie Willis did in the district attorney's office, not just going after Trump, but just hiring people based on skin color. So isn't this some type of violation of the equal employment opportunity, code and things like that? I don't understand how these companies can get away with these things. We saw recently, what was it? I think it was Microsoft, right? Or IBM. One of the
Microsoft.
heads of those companies were talking about how they're going to only hire certain people and not white people. So it seems as though it's not just an ideology, it's a crime that they
Right.
are doing.
Well, you're absolutely right, Josh, and you're good to point it out. And in fact, again, one of the reasons I wrote this book was that kind of just like somebody who's kind of been beaten down or almost a battered spouse, if I could use a sort of provocative metaphor, like white people were seeing all of this blatantly discriminating sort of things that should be illegal actually under civil rights law in many cases going on right in front of us, and we weren't supposed to say anything about it. We were just supposed to pretend, oh, this is normal and this is legal. And so what I wanted to say is, almost again like the counselor dealing with an abused victim. No, this isn't okay. It's not your fault, and you need to do something about it. And again, encouragingly, we're beginning to see some groups. I think America First Legal, Stephen Miller's
Yes.
outfit in D.C., has taken a real leadership role, and I've worked with them on some things. But in really just kind of taking these cases that are just blatant violations of the law that are happening against white people and beginning to put some real legal muscle behind overturning them. And so that's really encouraging.
So, what can the general public do? Obviously, they can learn and they can boycott, as we've seen has worked in the past. But is there anything else that they can do? Can they pressure, human resources departments? Can they do online petitions? Is there anything else that they can do to kind of stop this DEI in its tracks? Because that's really what needs to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. And my book covers a lot more than even just DEI or even just formal discrimination, because there's all sorts of informal racism that's kind of taking place, some of which is not technically illegal, but is still not the sort of thing that we should be putting up with. So I think I'd say a few things, and I do talk about various solutions that I think we should have in my book, but I think for an average citizen, sunlight is often the best disinfectant, as is said. And you put some of this ridiculous stuff on Twitter. You touched on the Microsoft memo. I mean, all it
Yes.
took was somebody to just put that out there on X. And then all of a sudden, enough people are like, this is completely ridiculous. And all of a sudden, Microsoft has a PR problem. You saw the same thing with Google AI, where billions of dollars were
Oh,
lost
yeah.
just by people exposing it. So I think people need to educate themselves. People need to speak up. And that is the best thing that an ordinary citizen can do to kind of really move the ball forward here, and to just not be afraid. And that was ultimately why I wrote the book, because I said it's ultimately the importance of dealing with this and the importance of getting back to core American values of treating people equally is more important than the fact that people are nervous or scared to talk about these issues.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Look, the bottom line is we have to be that can of Raid that is out there willing to spray the cockroaches out there. The Human Rights Campaign being, I think, number one on that list. But a lot of this has to also stem from the fact of the three-headed monster that pretty much runs all these corporations, right? You have Vanguard, and you have State Street Capital, and you have BlackRock, right? These three companies are pretty much the big three, and it's like they're dictating a lot of this policy as well to these other companies. And so maybe they're giving them kickbacks. Maybe they're paying them under the table to be woke. I don't know. But it seems as though a lot of these businesses, for instance, even Anheuser-Busch and Bud Light, even though they've lost a lot of money and they've fired their DEI, diversity people and all this other stuff, it doesn't seem as though it's going to completely go away. And so we have to just continue to fight against it. We're the ones with the money. We're the ones with the purse strings. And we have the power to shut this stuff down just by being, loud voices and, of course, in large numbers. So I want to thank you so much for being on the program. The guest is Jeremy Carl. The book is The Unprotected Class: How Anti-White Racism is Tearing America Apart. Where can folks go to find this very important book?
So you can, thanks, Josh. And again, thanks for having me on. You can pre-order it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble right now. It'll be out next month in retail, but it's already available for pre-order. And I've actually, we've gotten a number of good volume of pre-orders so far. So that's been gratifying. And then eventually in April, it should also hopefully be at your local bookstore. And if it's not, you can request a copy. And my publisher, Regnery Skyhorse, will be happy to go get one out to your local bookstore.
Sounds great. Well, again, thank you so much for being on the program. Keep up the good fight, and we'll have you back in the future, no doubt.
Great. Thanks so much, Josh. It was a pleasure to be on.
You got it. God bless.
Hey, Josh Bernstein here, America's favorite bald badass. Did you know that Bill O'Reilly charges $6.95 a month to see his content? Or how about the Blaze TV, who charges $10 a month? Or you could always subscribe to the Ben Shapiro podcast at $12 a month. But if you are looking for the best value and the most hardest hitting news, you've come to the right spot. Because here at JoshBernsteinUncensored.com, we drop the most jaw-dropping stories 7 days a week, starting at only $3 a month. So please head on over to the new releases tab, become an exclusive member of the Badass Nation, and join the fight to save this country with one of America's most hated, feared, and censored conservative voices. Remember, if it's banned on social media, you'll find it here. God bless.